Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Environmental Issues. For the visitors and guests in the class, I want to introduce myself. I'm Ron Amundsen, the instructor for the course and a professor in the Department of Environmental Science, Policy, and Management. We are very delighted and pleased to have as our guest, I guess, lecturer, if you will, Mr. Roger Mcguinn. For the guests in the class, I want to talk a little bit about what environmental issues is like. It's an introductory class to how our Earth system works and some of the issues facing our Earth during this century. And one of the themes that we've introduced to our students this year to sort of bring it to a personal level is what will the Earth and your life be like in the year 2050 when many of the students in this class will be turning 60. And so this brings, I think, some of the issues facing the environment home to a lot of the students in the class. And one of the things I've done this year to try to broaden the course and also to make it more immediate to students is think of analogies or metaphors that I can use to introduce topics. And a little over a week ago, I was sitting in my office thinking of how I could introduce the topic of Earth's physical systems, the climate cycle, the ocean circulation system. And one of the things that came to my mind was, almost simultaneously, the book of Ecclesiastes and the song Turn, Turn, Turn. And as a classroom metaphor, the song Turn, Turn, Turn has a lot better melody. And one of the beauties of the web is I could go online, and I found a wonderful video that somebody prepared with the backdrop or the soundtrack of Turn, Turn, Turn with a video montage that sort of illustrated the cycles of life and the Earth history. I played it for the class. I think it went over pretty well. And one of the things that happened, though, on my way into work that day to present the lecture, I turned the radio on, and on KFOG, Roger Mcguinn was being interviewed, and he mentioned that he and his wife would be in the Bay Area for a few weeks. So after class, I did something I normally don't do. I went back to my office and I found Roger Mcguinn's booking agent. I emailed her. Within a half an hour, I received a response. And then later in the afternoon, Camilla Mcguinn accepted our invitation to be here in the class today. And that in itself is a miracle. I email my colleagues down the hall and never hear back from them. So this was quite a miracle in itself. So as you all know, I think everybody in this room knows that Roger Mcguinn is one of the key and central figures in modern American music. The older people know, I think, through personal experience, and the class knows because I've been indoctrinating them for a couple of lectures. First of all, Roger Mcguinn is the co-founder, or was the co-founder, and the heart and soul of the band The Byrds. The Byrds were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1991, Roger and the rest of the band. Just a few years ago, Columbia came out with a very nice box set sort of encompassing their career with an appropriate title, There Is a Season. But that's just really the first part of Roger's career. As if you look and follow what he's been doing, he's recorded, influenced, and toured with artists of all sorts of, from all aspects of the musical field. He's released a number of wonderful solo albums. And then in 1995, before I even had an email address, he decided to take advantage of the web, the developing web, and use it as a vehicle to introduce people to folk music. And once a month, he would release online a recording of a folk song.
A folk song, right?
Yes.
A traditional folk song, as opposed to a folk song that somebody wrote yesterday.
And a few years ago, he re-recorded all of these and on a 4-CD set. It's part of what he calls his Folk Den project, and this is a great introduction to traditional American music. So, as a teacher and as a fan, I am really delighted to have Mr. Roger Mcguinn with us today. So please give him a formal welcome.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, just sort of a confession here. This is the first type of event I've had like this in my class. And
Okay.
over the weekend, the gravity of this sort of, I think, settled in on me. And I was worried about the logistics and the filming and all this.
It looks like it's working fine.
And I sent Camilla a sort of a over anxious email on Sunday. And a day later, an email returned, and it said, "I'm sure everything will be all right."
I trust everything will work out all right. Yeah.
Yes. And so that sort of helped to make me relax, and
Okay,
I
cool.
think this is going to go well.
Great.
I imagine you played in Berkeley before.
Yes, I can't tell you when, but I know I have.
But more, I guess, one of the reasons you're here, and I think something that will resonate with the class is your interest in technology, and you're here for Macworld, as I understand.
Right. Leo Laporte, the tech guy, I've been following him since his days on Tech TV, and he invited me to participate at Macworld. He's doing kind of like what you're doing at Macworld, like a live show, and he's going to have the band Warp 11, and let's see who else, Heather Gold, and Adam Savage from the Mythbusters, and me. So we're all going to, I'm really excited about meeting Adam Savage. I love the Mythbusters.
My son would be too.
Oh, yeah. So that's why I'm in town. And I got this email to participate in it, and I took it to Camilla, who does all the logistics for us. And she said, well, I could fly you out there in frequent flyer points. And I went, no, that's no fun. I want you to come along. It's a honeymoon. So about 10 minutes later, I got an offer from the Cunard cruise line to do 2 lectures on the Queen Victoria for a free passage from New York to San Francisco. It was perfect. The only catch was we got here a couple of weeks early. So we rented a condo in the city, and we've been taking cable cars around and just really enjoying living in San Francisco.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And now, in terms of, I guess, Macs and your music?
Yes, I record all my stuff on a MacBook Pro with Pro Tools, and it's something anybody can do. It used to be that Pro Tools was really expensive. It used to cost $10,000 to get into it, but over the years they've got the Pro Tools LE platform that will run on any Mac and even run on PCs, and it's only $300 and you get the hardware with it, so it's a deal. Before I used to be into Cool Edit Pro, which was about $300, and it was bought by Adobe, and it's Adobe Audition, and I'm still a beta tester for Adobe Audition 4.0 that's coming out pretty soon. But I like Pro Tools because it's what everybody uses. And when I was using Adobe Audition, I was getting Pro Tools sessions sent to me by PBS and various other places, and I had to get Pro Tools going to be able to record on those sessions. So I got into it, and it's just become the industry standard, whereas Adobe Audition is kind of backwater program, although it's a really great program, and a lot of radio stations use it. But I'm into both of them, and I love the way recording on a computer has democratized the whole system of music recording. Before, you had to sell out to the company. I mean, they would front you like $1 million to do an album, and it would cost that much because the studio time was $6,000 a day, or $1,000 an hour, or whatever, and then they'd shoot a video for like another $500,000, and it really got expensive. Nowadays, you can go down and get yourself a MacBook Pro and a $300 DigiDesign, like an M-Box or something, and record CD quality stuff and put it out on Amazon.com, and you don't need the record company. So, and the bottom line with the record company, I don't know if anybody ever read the Courtney Love thing. Courtney Love does the math. She has this hypothetical band that gets $1 million advance, and they sell 1 million CDs, and at the end of the day, they would have been better off working at the 7-Eleven.
I haven't asked the class, are there any aspiring musicians in the class? No?
No? Okay. Well, just ignore what I said.
I have to ask you, when did you get your first computer?
It was in the early 80s. I was a little late. I didn't get into it in 75 or 6 when Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs were playing around with them. But I got one, I think it was a Radio Shack color computer, and I got into that and got disk drives for it and printers, and finally got my wife interested when it could print things out, and she could do the books on it and stuff. And I got into bulletin boards. I got my first modem, I think, around '82, and I was on all these bulletin boards, and it was fun. It was before the internet. And we even had email going. We had a proprietary system called Easy Street, which cost $100 a month, and you could only email people who had a subscription to it. But it was in the early '80s. Before the internet's great. I love it.
Yeah. You know, it sort of strikes me you're a folk musician, and yet technology is such a big part of your career.
Yeah, I've always had both going. I've even when I was a little kid, my grandfather was an engineer in Chicago, and he used to take me to Chicago's Museum of Science and Industry when I was 3 years old and on up, and I got a love for gadgets, so I've been into that ever since.
One interesting anecdote I read online is that when you were touring with the Byrds, you bought one of the first cassette recorders.
Yes. It was a brand new invention, if you can believe. Something that is now obsolete was a new invention. But I saw it in a shop in London, the kind of shop that sells vacuum cleaners and space heaters and things, and it was sitting there. And I looked at it, I said, what is that? It's like a little bigger than a transistor radio, which is another old thing. And I went inside and I said, is that a tape recorder? And he said, yeah. And it was so new that they didn't have any pre-recorded cassettes for it. So I bought it and 3 cassettes, 3 blanks. And I recorded the girl screaming at one of our Byrds concerts in London and put that on So You Want to Be a Rock and Roll Star when we got back into the studio. And then we recorded John Coltrane on one side of a blank cassette and Ravi Shankar on the other. And it was a Coltrane piece called India. And it had that musical phrase in it. So I used that on 8 Miles High. That was the impetus for 8 Miles High.
Great. Well, again, I'm new at this, so if you want to play, please tell me. Play a song. I haven't been trained for this.
I'll just play when, if you wanted me to play Turn, 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 you were talking about it.
Right.
Does that make sense? You want me to do that at some other time?
Yeah, okay.
Well, you just tell me what you want.
Okay, all right. All right. Well, let's talk about Turn, 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 because one of the things that I think humans have dealt with in terms of contemplating the earth and time and everything is there's always been a dichotomy. I guess the ends of the dichotomy are that time is an arrow, time is a cycle. But I think one of the things that comes together, especially in Ecclesiastes and even in science, is that really both of these metaphors have to work together to really describe how things are going. We go through cycles and yet we never return really to where we come before. Mm-hmm. And in the class, we were talking about this before we went on stage here, that one of the problems with so many introductions to environmental issues in this century is that the prognosis looks grim and can seem dark, even with the best intentions in documentaries. It kind of provides a sense of despair to some of the students.
Like we're trashing the place, right?
Like we're trashing the place. Yeah. Now, the song Turn, Turn, Turn has a wonderful message. Well, first the buoyant melody, and then at the end, the phrase, I swear it's not too late, which gives this, incredible sense of hope.
Right.
And I look back at this, and when you did this and your band put it together, you were the same age as many of the students in this class.
Yeah.
And it would be very interesting. I'm sure the students would like to hear, how did this song, how did you fall into it?
Okay. Well, I'd heard the song from Pete Seeger. I've been a follower of Pete's for many years when we got the Byrds together. And I'd worked with Judy Collins on her Electra third album, and she did Turn, Turn, Turn on that. So I knew the song. And I had this theory that any song would benefit from what the Beatles were doing, which was a 4/4 beat. And the original Pete Seeger version of the song was very loose. It was like, to everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, 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 and a time to every purpose under heaven. Went on. So somebody asked me if I knew the song, and I immediately applied a 4/4 rock beat to it, and it came out more like. To everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, 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 and a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to reap, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to laugh, a time to eat. To everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, 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 and a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to build up, a time to break down, a time to dance, a time to mourn, a time to cast away stones, a time to gather stones together. To everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, 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 and a time to every purpose under heaven. A time of love, a time of hate, a time of war, a time of peace, a time you may embrace, a time to refrain from embracing. To everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, 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 and a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to gain, a time to lose, a time to rend, a time to sow, a time for love, a time for hate, a time for peace. I swear it's not too late. Thank you. Pete Seeger talked about how that came about. He got a letter from his publisher that said, "Pete, you got to stop writing these protest songs. I just can't sell them." And Pete got mad. He said, "Well, you've got the wrong songwriter then. That's what I do." And he pulled out a slip of paper from his pocket, and he'd written down the first 8 verses of Ecclesiastes chapter 3 and made up a little tune to it, and then had to make it kind of rhyme, so he put that turn, turn, turn thing on it, and at the end he had to make it fill out to the whole verse, so he put "A time for peace, I swear it's not too late," which was kind of a sneaky protest song, and gave it to his publisher, and he liked it. And Pete went around doing it, and then Judy Collins did it, and the Byrds did it, and put Pete's kids through college.
I read online that recording the song with the Byrds wasn't that easy of a task.
That's right. The first single the Byrds did was Mr. Tambourine Man, a Bob Dylan song. And Terry Melcher, who was Doris Day's son, by the way, was our record producer, and he'd heard the Byrds play, and he went, these guys are not ready for the big time. But I'd had about 5 years as a studio musician under my belt, so they let me play on it along with these other guys called the Wrecking Crew, which was Hal Blaine and Larry Knechtel, Leon Russell, and Jerry Cole, and Bill Pittman. And they were wonderful studio musicians who could just knock things out. In fact, we got 2 songs in one 3-hour session. And that was fun. That was a really honor for me to play with these big guys. You know, it's great. And they were really tight. And you can hear, on YouTube, you can hear Terry Melcher talking to the Wrecking Crew and me out there I'm playing my Rickenbacker. You can find that somewhere. Anyway, it was fun. But when naturally all the Byrds complained that they didn't get to record on their own track. Not knowing that the Beach Boys didn't record their own tracks, and Phil Spector used the Wrecking Crew, and everybody in Hollywood used the Wrecking Crew. But anyway, the Byrds finally got to do all their own backing tracks after that. They complained so much. And it took us 77 takes to get Turn, Turn, Turn.
I guess there went all the royalties.
No, well, it's a lot of studio time, yeah.
A lot of studio time, yes.
Right. Just royalties are a joke anyway. I mean, musicians back then signed away everything. You know, we didn't get. You were telling you before, my contract with Columbia Records with the Byrds, I got .0007 cents per album. Yeah, really a lousy deal.
Which makes the ability then to record your own material and market it yourself a tremendous opportunity.
Yeah, this is great to be able to do this. I mean, we designed the artwork and hired the photographer and put the package together. The record company was having all the fun, and they were charging it back to us and not paying us anything. So it's great. You sell this on Amazon.com, and boom, you're good to go.
Great. I want to sort of bring our discussion a little bit to environmental issues and the role of music in the environment. And in this class last week, I talked about how science works, how scientists operate, and and the problem of transmitting scientific knowledge to the general public. And later in this class, I'll have people from the business and economics community come in and talk about environmental economics. We had a guest speaker speaking about environmental justice and that sort of reason for connecting with the environment. And I also mentioned in my lecture it's a real problem because scientists are working hard to create knowledge about environmental change that's occurring in the century, and yet the population's acceptance of this is sort of a wavy issue.
Right. Well, there's a tremendous impetus from the oil companies, especially to discourage anyone from believing in global warming, because they have trillions of dollars worth of oil to sell.
Right.
So
there's a marketing campaign against science.
And they buy their own scientists who come out with their own scientific conclusions the way they want them to.
Yes.
Right.
I used one thing that strikes me, and I mentioned this to my class, is that a person to me that has been very successful in bridging knowledge to very unexpected recipients is Bono from U2. That's taken his musical credibility or his stature as a musician, but also with his personal spiritual beliefs has connected with sort of unexpected recipients in terms of global poverty and AIDS.
Yeah, he's really remarkable that way. Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And so one of the avenues that strikes me as a way or avenue to help on a personal level connect with somebody's personal value system is music and art. And I guess I'm going to ask you, what kind of environmental issues are important to you, and how do you use your music as a way to transmit that?
Well, we wrote a song called "The Trees Are All Gone" for my Back from Rio CD, which was 1991, and it was because Camilla had studied with a professor that talked about how the rainforests were being destroyed to raise cattle, but only for one season, and then the land was worthless. They destroyed this beautiful ecosystem, and it couldn't be replaced, and they couldn't even raise cattle on it anymore. It was worthless. So I thought, what a horrible waste, what a tragedy. And so we wrote this song. I'll play it.
Great.
Glaciers near the polar caps have all begun to melt. Temperatures are on the rise, far from the southern belt. Rising waters, shifting tides on every changing land. Rainforests in the Amazon have vanished from our hands. And the trees are all gone. Yeah, you know it's all wrong. And the trees are all gone. People want to eat today, and so they clear the land. Global warming is a concept they won't understand. But all the politicians now, they have no excuse. They just hide behind their power and keep us from the truth. And the trees are all gone. Yeah, you know it's all wrong. And the trees are all gone. Man has tried his suicide with bigotry and hate, but in the end he'll kill himself with nothing but his ways. And the trees are all gone. What will finally happen when these farmlands turn to dust? When only rich receive the food and nothing's left for us. But all the politicians now, they have no excuse. They just hide behind their power and keep us from the truth. And the trees are all gone. Yeah, you know it's all wrong. And the trees are all gone. And the trees are all gone. Yeah, you know it's all wrong. And the trees are all gone. That was 19 years ago. It really hasn't saved the planet yet. But
No, but it's, as we were talking about before we came in here, the fact that you were referring to the ice caps melting and things in the song was way ahead of the curve. And as you mentioned, it was even before Al Gore had invented the internet.
That's right.
What was the name of that album, Back from Rio? Did that have an environmental connection, or was that
Well,
another?
the Rio part was about the rainforest, yeah. Mm-hmm. And then it was also kind of a joke about, I changed my name back in 1967 from Jim, I was Jim McGuinn up until 67. I became Roger Mcguinn, and that was because back in the 60s we experimented with a lot of weird stuff. And one of the things was this Eastern philosophy, and the guy over in Indonesia said I would vibrate better with the universe if I changed my name to one that he gave me. So I thought, okay, I'll give it a try. And he sent me the letter R and told me to pick 10 names that started with an R. And being into science fiction, I picked names like Rocket and so on. And the only real name in the batch was Roger, because it's a two-way radio word. So he picked Roger, and I thought, oh, okay, cool. So I changed my middle name from Joseph to Roger legally, and I stopped using Jim as my first name, although it technically is still James, and I started using Roger McGuinn as a stage name. And a lot of people didn't understand that. They thought Jim McGuinn had gone down to Rio got tired of the hurly-burly of the music business and got out of it and left the country. And his brother Roger took over. But that wasn't the case. So Back from Rio is like coming back.
Have you written any other songs since that really have a overt
I can't think of any. As you mentioned, back in 1995, I got back into the traditional side of music because I realized there was an absence of it. What happens in the music business is publishing is where all the money is. And if you write a song and publish it yourself, you can get more money than if you do a traditional public domain song. So people stopped doing public domain material about the time Joni Mitchell and Bob Dylan became popular singer-songwriters, and it became a trend that all the folk singers now played acoustic guitars, but they didn't do folk songs anymore. They did their own material, usually confessional songs.
Yeah.
And that's not bad. That's good stuff. A lot of it's wonderful, but the problem was that some of the traditional songs were being neglected. And I thought, wow, Pete Seeger is old, he just turned 90, and Odetta died last year. This is back 15 years ago, who's going to hold up that end of it? So I decided to take it on myself to do that, and I started putting up, they're all MP3s now, but back when I did it, they were 8-bit, 11 kilohertz wave files. And then we went to real audio for a while, which is difficult. And then finally, it's all MP3s. There are about 177 MP3s on my site, and they're all free, and you can download them, and I won't sue you or anybody.
Great. Folk music, the Folk Den Project, as you mentioned, is a way to bring traditional folk music back into public.
To kind of keep it alive.
Yeah, keep it alive. And I guess folk music is to me in some ways a way of common people really telling stories about their immediate as well as the bigger world that they live in.
Yeah, it's the work songs, the sea shanties, prison songs, cowboy songs, usually working people's songs, songs about, and songs that they used in their work, like the sea shanties had a function as well as just sounding good. They were used as a synchronization device to get all the guys to pull at the right time. There'd be one guy who'd chant something, that they'd all come back with an answer, and they'd pull up the anchor or raise the sails or whatever it had to be done.
I was looking through some of the songs that you've recorded, and some of them deal with flooding in Galveston, I think.
Right, the Galveston flood.
And that's fitting in. That connection to our class is the increase in we discussed this, the increase in the ocean level, but also the increase in the severity of tropical cyclones. And that song has a very personal and immediate way of sort of relaying that.
Yeah. I'm not going to do that song, but
okay. Well, I don't.
Yeah, but it's a really good song.
Yeah.
I haven't got it worked up.
Okay.
So, yeah, I've got it on the recording now.
But I'll just. Is there any song that from your Folk Den collection you might feel
let's see.
good about playing?
I'll do it. Let's see. What's a good one? Yeah. You want something environmental, huh?
Or whatever. Actually whatever strikes you. I think folk music has such a universal connection to people. Well,
I love the old folk songs. Let's see if I can find one that. I'll do a sea shanty because this is an old song that they used to use on the packet ships that used to go between Europe and the U.S. and there were cargo ships, and a lot of them were in this 3/4 or 6/8 time signature. There's some that's bound for New York town, and others is bound for France. Heave away, me Johnnies, heave away. And some is bound for the Bengal Bay to teach them whales a dance. And away, me Johnny boys, we're all bound to go. Our pilot is a-waiting for the turning of the tide. Heave away, me Johnnies, heave away. And one more we're pulling, we're bound away with a good and westerly wind. And away, me Johnny boys, we're all bound to go. Farewell to you, dear Kingston gals, farewell to St. Andrew's Dock. Heave away, me Johnny, heave away. If ever we should come back again, we'll make your cradles rock. And away, me Johnny boys, we're all bound to go.
I don't want to monopolize the entire hour, so I'm going to turn the mic over for questions from the audience here in a moment. So if you have questions for Mr. Mcguinn, feel free to do that. Well, what I'll do is have two of the GSIs. We have one mic, so we'll pass it around so you can ask your question, and then you'll be recorded on the video that's being prepared, and then Roger can reply. Before I turn the mic over, just sort of a personal connection to you and your music. I grew up on a farm in South Dakota, and when I was in high school, a local classical station decided for some reason 4 hours each night, 5 days a week, they'd turn it over to this young scholar, and he'd come in with all his records and play what was coming out at the time.
Okay.
And it was about the time, I guess, it was your album Untitled came out with the Byrds, and I remember sitting in my room at night listening on a little transistor radio, one of these little things these guys haven't heard of, listening to Chestnut Mare, and that was my first connection with your music coming out.
Well, that's cool. Yeah, the transistor radio was kind of like the iPod of its day. It was a new invention back in the 50s. First one was made in 1954 by the Regency Company from some Texas Instrument transistors that they really didn't know what to do with. They'd invented this thing, the transistor, but they didn't know what they could do with it. And somebody had the bright idea to, oh, let's see if we can make a radio with it. And they made a 4-transistor radio called the Regency TR1, and I got one. That was my first radio. I got a collection of them on my website, too.
Oh, okay, great. All right, so what we'll do is, if you have any questions for Mr. Mcguinn, please raise your hand, and we'll pass the mic to you.
Hi, I was interested in your guitar, actually.
Yeah.
7 strings.
Yes, it is. It's a 7-string guitar, and it's not like other 7-string guitars that usually have a low B string. This one is one I designed after Air France broke one of my acoustic 12-string guitars coming back from Paris. When I got to New York, the whole bottom end of it was caved in, and I thought, well, it would be better if I didn't carry so many guitars on airplanes. And so I thought of putting the best part of a 12-string, which for me, in my opinion, is this pair of strings here. It's an octave pair. Now, on a 12-string, there are 4 octave strings. All these are octave strings, but this one is the most important one because I play leads up and down like I did on Turn, Turn, Turn. Like it goes. And when you do that, it sounds like a 12-string. It also sounds kind of like a 12 when you just strum it. So it's got the best of a 12-string and then the facility of a 6-string where you can bend the string or do these little runs like. So it's kind of like a Swiss Army knife of a guitar. And I designed it for Martin, and Martin makes these and sells them, and it's like a signature series called the Roger Mcguinn HD7. So that's what the guitar is all about. Hello.
You mentioned that the music in 8 Mile High was inspired in part by John Coltrane. And I'm curious about that path of the jazz influence on your music. Can you say more about that?
We were on tour in the States after having come back from a rather horrendous tour of the UK, of England, because unbeknownst to us, they'd billed us as America's answer to the Beatles. And that was a tough thing to live up to. And the press was out to crucify us. So that was a tough tour. But when we got back, Gene Clark had some chords. like this. And we thought of writing a song about the tour. And coincidentally, we bumped into a friend of David Crosby's who had John Coltrane's India and Africa, his latest release. And I mentioned the cassette player that I had, the cassette recorder. So I recorded Coltrane on one side and Ravi Shankar on the other. And we taped the cassette recorder to the top of a Fender amp in the tour bus and listened to Coltrane for half an hour and Ravi Shankar for half an hour. And that was the only music we had for a month-long bus tour. So by the time we got back to LA, we were really steeped in this stuff. And it just came out of our ears. I mean, that was what was happening in our heads when we were recording 8 Miles High. And we wrote the song about the trip. So, oh, and also the term 8 came out of, we were on the airplane and Gene Clark said, how high do you think this plane is flying? I said, oh, about 6 miles high, 37,000 feet. And he said, I didn't like the sound of that. I like the sound of 8 because the Beatles had a song called 8 Days a Week. So he wanted to use the number 8 instead. So we named it 8 Miles High. Didn't make a lot of sense, but. Yes.
First of all, as an old traditional folk player, both old and traditional, but I want to thank you for what you've done. I sort of think of you as the electronic Alan Lomax, you know, what he did in the 1920s for the Library of Congress, collecting music.
That's a very nice compliment, thank you.
Well, I think it's true. You really have brought folk music, traditional folk music back.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you a technological question, though, and it's really not a question, just a entree for you to speak about. On your blog, you talk a lot about your solar-powered
yes. Okay.
technology.
I'll tell you.
Talk a little more about that?
Yeah, I'll give you a brief rundown on what happened. My brother gave me a gift card for, I think it was Backspace, I don't know, it was some website, and I went on there, and the only thing I found that I liked on there was a solar panel that folded out that was good for charging cell phones. So I got that and charged my cell phone with it, and then I started charging my Mac with it, and I ran the Mac for like a couple of months without plugging it into the wall. I thought, this is cool. So I thought, what else can I do? And I got another one. I got a 15-watter, and I started running something else on that. And then I got 4 of them, and we thought, well, what can we do with that? And we live in a hot environment where they have frequent tropical storms and hurricanes that knock the power out. And in the summer, that's very uncomfortable. So we thought, well, an ice machine would help. So we got an ice machine and plugged it into the 4 solar panels, and we had solar ice. That was cool. And then we thought, what else can we do with it? So I tried to run, I found this electric scooter, like a little Vespa thing, but it runs on batteries. And I plugged that into the solar panels I had. They weren't quite enough, so I got 2 64-watt solar panels, and they were laying out on the driveway, and I thought, well, somebody's going to run over them and break them. I'd like to get them up on the roof. And they thought, well, if you're going to put them up on the roof, let's just do it right. Let's just do the whole roof in it. So now we have a 6.2 kilowatt system that runs pretty much of everything. Yeah. One thing leads to another.
Hi. I was wondering, folk music, as you mentioned, comes out of a lot of workers' experiences of the workplace, etc. And of course, that involved traditionally a lot of manual labor.
Yes.
Where I come from Quebec, for example, a lot of our folk songs come from when the lumberjacks were up north and actually were also making songs up to the rhythm of the saw.
Right, so they could use it to saw with.
Yes, yeah.
Right.
And I was wondering, so what would folk music be to this generation, for example, of students here, like when they'll be,
that's a good question.
You know, in the 60s? What would it
Well, it would be
like
things from the environment. It would be things like a song about my Mac crashed yesterday. You know, like my battery blew up. You know,
my solar battery blew up.
my solar battery blew up. Yeah, right. Things like that.
And then how do you see computers affecting folk music? For example, well, you've done wonderful work using computers and the internet, making sure, you know, those old folk songs would
Well,
survive.
there are two ways. The creation of music is done a lot by computers. I don't mean just the recording of it. I mean really making the tracks up, making the rhythm tracks and so on. That's done a lot with computers now. And then recording is all done on computers. In fact, I don't think they make magnetic tape anymore. They quit doing that about 15 years ago. I remember going to a Dolly Parton session in Nashville. I was going to record a duet with her. And she had like a $100,000 Studer 24 track sitting in the corner and this Neve board, which is very expensive, like a $500,000 board. And they were just using 2 inputs from it to go into a Mac with a mouse. And they were recording on Pro Tools, which everybody does now. And nobody uses the old tape machines anymore. So computers are essential to recording music and creating music. Things like GarageBand and, you know, wonderful tools in there with all kinds of pre-recorded backing tracks and instruments and things you can use to make almost a symphony or whatever you want. You can make all kinds of stuff with it.
I'll turn it over to some other questions. I was just going to mention that one thing we'll be talking about in this class in a few weeks is the impact of consumerism and consumer choice on the environment. And I know you're a Mac aficionado, and I would just put a plug in for my colleague, Dara O'Rourke, who took 2 years off here from Cal to start a nonprofit company. And they've got a wonderful app that I'll demonstrate to the students. It's called Good Guides. And with the application, we were trying this out at home last night, you can scan the barcode on consumer products, and it will give you a rating on the environmental impact, the health impact, and the social impact.
Oh, that's great. I want that.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll show you where to get it. It's a fantastic thing because it helps consumers with a little device that we now carry in our pocket make more intelligent choices.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I wasn't aware of that app. I knew about Red Laser, which will give you the pricing on, it'll scan barcodes and give you a pricing, but to see the environmental impact is really good, yeah.
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Hello. First, I'm curious about how you perceive your role in the late 60s and early 70s in regards to political and social change, and the role of music in general. And then also, currently, there is that atmosphere of change again. And if there are any new artists or artists that you kind of that you think are fulfilling that role currently.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, back in the 60s, we did some stuff like Draft Morning. It was a song about a guy going into the military unwillingly. And, you know, and then it had machine guns in it and stuff like that. We did some political stuff about the Vietnam War, but not a whole lot. It wasn't our whole thrust, like, say, Joan Baez, where almost everything she did, she was more of an activist than a singer at one point. And she felt that was her role. But we were more into, you know, we did some stuff like that. I remember doing Pete Seeger's wonderful song, I Come and Stand at Every Door, about nuclear holocaust and blowing up Japan. You know, and things that we shouldn't do. And so we did some activist stuff, but not as much as other people, but we were into it. We were coming from there. As far as people doing it today, I don't hear a whole lot of it. I think Bono, you're talking about, is more coming from that position. I can't think of a lot of activist singers out there at this point. Most people are just sort of doing their thing. I don't know. Do you know of any that you can recommend? Okay. Defer that one, okay. Okay. Okay, well, that's all I can say.
Any other questions? Yes.
Hi.
I wanted to know what made you choose to come to our class. And I'd like to know if there were any ideas about the environment that you'd like to leave with us.
About what? I'm sorry, the last
About the environment that you'd like to leave with us, or any impressions. I know that we had the whole discussion, so it's kind of, for me, like a sum up of like the
Yeah.
most integral ideas.
Okay,
of the
well, the first
discussion.
part of your question, I came here with really no agenda. Into the San Francisco area with nothing to do for 2 weeks. And then we ran into all kinds of things like the K-Fog and the offer to come here. And I've been doing lectures at colleges, so it was something that I was interested in doing. And my feeling about what we can do is do as much as you can, reuse, recycle, repair, all this stuff and solar energy. I'm all for solar and wind. Renewable resources. I'm not really big on nuclear energy because we don't know how to store the waste product. It's not there yet. I'm into nuclear reactors as long as they're 93 million miles away. Hi. Okay.
I wanted to ask, who were your influences like growing up and like throughout your lifetime, like people that have influenced your music and like your constant CDs coming out?
Okay. The first influence was when I got my transistor radio. I used to ride my bicycle around Chicago listening to it, and I heard, well, since my baby left me, well, I found a new place to dwell. And that flipped me out because it was unlike the other stuff on the radio, like how much is that doggy in the window, or when the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie. It was completely different. It was a blend of some really cool stuff, and it made me want to get a guitar. So that was the first thing. And then shortly after that, I realized the folk music thing was going on. I learned about Pete Seeger and the Weavers and Odetta and Josh White and Big Bill Brunsey and Leadbelly, and I got into that. So, and that's where my heart has been ever since. Even though the Byrds were a rock band, we were like an electric folk band, really. That's where I was coming from. So those are the early influences. And then Dylan was an influence when he started writing some really good songs, and I liked his work.
I was just going to ask you, like, when you started playing guitar and if you play, like, any other instruments.
I do. I started playing guitar when I was 14. I got my first guitar for my 14th birthday. And I initially started on 6-string guitar, and then I got a 12-string guitar and a 5-string banjo. And I pretty much played those 3 most of my career, but lately I picked up mandolin too, so I play a little mandolin. Those are just stringed instruments. I don't play keyboards or anything.
Okay, forgive me if I read too much into this, but when you said that the big oil companies are sort of buy their own scientists to come up with so-called science that proves that global warming isn't happening, were you at all making a veiled allusion to the BP deal with the University of California? And if not, maybe this is a question for the professor about how he thinks that's working.
Well, I was just thinking about who killed the electric car. That was an eye-opener for me, that whole thing that happened with the kind of collusion between the oil companies and General Motors and the pressure, the government suing the California Air Resources Board and getting them to collapse under the pressure. That was very sad. So that was what I was thinking about.
Besides changing your name, what's the craziest thing you did in the 70s?
I didn't get that.
Besides changing your name, what was the craziest thing you did in the 70s?
In the 60s and 70s. I shouldn't talk about some of those. That's one reason why I don't really want to write a book, because if I told the truth, a lot of people would sue me. So I did some crazy stuff. Just leave it at that.
What was the beginning of your musical career like? Was it like really slow, fast, or?
It was pretty quick. got my guitar at 14, and I got my first professional job from a group called the Limelighters at 17. So this is all while I was in high school, and I was going to another school for music called the Old Town School of Folk Music in Chicago at the same time. And I just got sort of picked up by a band and flown out to the West Coast and recorded. And then right after that, I got with the Chad Mitchell Trio. And right after that, I worked with Bobby Darin and Judy Collins and Paul Simon. I was on the demo of Sounds of Silence before Simon and Garfunkel were really happening. And then the Byrds happened, so it was one thing after another, pretty quick.
Hi, Roger.
Hi.
I had the pleasure to have coffee with you earlier. I was coming into the building, and then I see Roger Mcguinn, and I knew who he is because I'm a professor here, but when I was younger in Chile, where I was born, we had a band that imitated the birds called Los Pájaros. And I know you've been in Europe and other places, but I don't know if you know the dimension of the fame of the birds and your work, particularly in Latin America.
I didn't realize that, no.
And actually, the most famous song of the birds, at least in my country at that time, was Younger Than Yesterday.
Younger Than Yesterday, okay.
And the most famous album was the Notorious Bird Brothers.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Oh, good. I wasn't aware of those things. I sometimes get email from Rio and Sao Paulo, but I don't think I've gotten any from Chile. So I have no way of knowing what the impact of the birds was there. I did tour South America with the Chad Mitchell Trio, and I hit almost every city in South America within a 3-month period, and that was an amazing tour. We got to really experience it. It was fun. Yes?
A question about recording. There's a lot of debate over digital technology and analog equipment and the warmth that comes with using analog, and I was curious to know your views and why you might prefer Pro Tools maybe over using a tape machine.
Okay. There is a difference between analog and digital. Analog is warmer, and I remember when they switched from tubes to transistors in their amplifiers in the recording studio, I could hear a difference. So there are a lot of things that got compromised over the years, but if your end product's going to end up on a CD or an MP3, it's not going to make a whole lot of difference because it's going to be digital in the end, and it's going to be compressed if it's an MP3. So, the warmth that you get, you're only going to hear it in the recording studio. You won't hear it anywhere else because it'll get stepped down. You could put it on vinyl, yeah, that's cool. And then you get the clicks and pops to go with it. But it is warm. So yeah, and vinyl is making a comeback for that reason. That's a good thing. That's a good point. And we have some product that comes out on vinyl too that comes from Sundazed, 18-gram vinyl. It's really, really good stuff. But the reason I like Pro Tools and the MacBook Pro is because it's so portable. I mean, I have it with me in where we're staying. I was able to record a song for the Folk Den, and I didn't have to go to a studio, and it's just very convenient. It's kind of like, everybody knows MP3s don't sound as good as CDs, but they're more convenient because you can put thousands of them on your iPhone or whatever. So it's a convenience thing. I can't carry a big tape machine around with me.
Roger, that's probably going to be a selfish request with coming along with my question, but I would really love to hear you play again and sing. So I was wondering, when you're really happy, what kind of song do you want? Do you feel like playing?
I'll play the song that he mentioned that was a hit in Chile. It's a Bob Dylan song. Crimson flames tear through my ears, throwing high and mighty draft. Countless fiery flame and road using ideas as my maps. We'll meet on edges soon, said I, proud neath heated brow. Ah, but I was so much older then, I'm younger than that now. In a soldier's stance, I aim my hand at the mongrel dogs who teach, fearing that I'd become my enemy in the instant that I preach. Existence led by confusion, both mutiny from stern to bow. Ah, but I was so much older then, I'm younger than that now. Half-racked prejudice leap forth, rip down all hate I scream. Lies that life is black and white, spoke from my skull I dream. Romantic flanks of musketeers, foundation deep somehow. I was so much older then, I'm younger than that now. But I was so much older then, I'm younger than that now.
One sec. Okay, so I just want to hear it from you right now. What do you think about the iPad? And I know you're here for Macworld.
Yeah.
And I've just been so angry that people are calling it like a big paperweight, a big failure, but I see so many uses for it in other industries, and especially in the music and medical industry. So
yeah, I do too. I think it's a great device, and I'm going to probably get one. Maybe let it shake out a little bit, because the iPhone went down $100 in the first month or whatever. So we'll see what happens. And also they come up with more apps for it and things like that. But I think it's a really cool device. And if you think of it in terms of what you're saying in the medical field as a tool or for looking up records, and wonderful for that. And it's great as a Kindle. It's a Kindle with pinch and hand controls and color and links and things that Kindle wishes it had. The only thing Kindle has over it is the electronic ink, which would be a great thing if you could combine the two. But I love the iPad. I think it's a cool device, and I'll probably get one.
Well, before we close class, I would like to make a presentation to Roger. It wouldn't be an official visit to Berkeley without something. So it would certainly not be official without a plaque. And so the dean's office helped put this together. It says, this is from the University of California College of Natural Resources. A certificate of appreciation is presented to Mr. Roger Mcguinn for his commitment to connect scientific knowledge with the public through music and art.
Thank you very much. That's a great honor. Thank you very much. I'm very happy about that.
Now, I know what it's like to travel, and you go places and they give you big, heavy gifts, and that's certainly not a thing when you don't want a lot of heavy gifts to go home with you. So we have two books for you, and great. I'll just say that the way I look at these, they're two, think of them as guides to the environment of California. The first book is called Law's Guide to the Sierra Nevada. It's written by a former student here in the College of Natural Resources and illustrated by him. And so if you come back to California and better in the summertime and go for a walk in the mountains.
What I'm looking at.
Yes.
Great. Thank you. This is, all right.
So that's sort of
Wonderful.
a guide to the natural environment of California.
Okay.
And then I think of this as a guide to the emotional and maybe a bit of the spiritual environment of California. It's a book by Berkeley's own Pulitzer Prize-winning poet, Robert Haas. And so I thought you would appreciate that sort of connecting with the
Okay.
artistic side.
Got it covered from all aspects. then, huh?
Yes.
Very good. Maybe we'll find some songs in your...
Yes, I
Okay.
hope so. That's what I hope.
Well, thank you. Thanks
Yes,
a lot.
you're welcome. It's a pleasure, and I really appreciate having you here and all of the hospitality and graciousness that you and Camilla have provided.
Well,
so,
it was my pleasure, and thank you for your hospitality. And
You're
thank you
welcome.
all for coming to the class and checking it out.
Is would you be interested in closing with a song? Okay, I've asked him if he would be interested in closing with a song, so we'll see what comes up.
Hey, Mr. Tambourine Man, play a song for me. I'm not sleepy and there ain't no place I'm going to. Hey, Mr. Tambourine Man, play a song for me. In the jingle jangle morning, I'll come following you. Take me for a trip upon your magic swirling ship. All my senses have been stripped, and my hands can't feel to grip, and my toes too numb to step. Wait only for my boot heels to be wandering. I'm ready to go anywhere. I'm ready for to fade on to my own parade. Cast your dancing spell my way. I promise to go under it. Hey, Mr. Tambourine Man, play a song for me. I'm not sleepy and there ain't no place I'm going to. Hey, Mr. Tambourine Man, play a song for me. In the jingle jangle morning, I'll come following you.